the brain is filtering out information all day long based on what it thinks is important to you. There's a whole beautiful department of the brain called the reticular activating system. This is the whole red car syndrome, where you never noticed red cars. You bought a red car. Now all you see is red cars because your brain is seeking out a pattern and that you tell it. So the fact that like whatever you're obsessed with, whatever you have taught your brain to pay attention to, it's going to raise a flag, show it to you. The things that you haven't deemed super important, it's going to filter out. You won't even see it.
Hi, and welcome back to the Bombshell Business Podcast. I'm your host, Amber Hurdle, and today I'm just going to try to contain myself because we're going to talk about some really cool things and things that I am very interested in. And I've talked about a little bit here and there on the podcast, and I've talked about being like neurodivergent and anxiety and like all kinds of stuff, and also just optimal living. So hold on to your mini skirts in the summertime, girls. It's time to go because today's guest is going to talk nerdy with me about neuromarketing. I can't even get it out. Neuromarketing. That's a mouthful. Neuromarketing, and how applying insights from neuroscience can improve our understanding of consumer behavior. Lauren Alexander, today's guest, is VP of Marketing at Neurohacker Collective, a company focused on making wellness products best known for their Qualia Mind supplement. I think I said that correctly. I looked it up so I could get those words right. Lauren is the mother of 2 young children, a passionate gardener, another way that we connect, and a biohacker. Her passion for biohacking is reflected in her upcoming book, The Biohacker Experiment, which is set to be released this year. Lauren, now that I've spit all that out, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love neuroplasticity. I love learning about how the brain can change and move and create new neural pathways. Like, I think that the brain is the most fascinating thing on planet Earth and probably in the whole freaking galaxy. So I'm really excited about talking about it as it relates to consumer behavior and marketing and what do we know about that. Because we're getting into some like really weird territory in the world right now, and we need to be able to like have a leg up. And I feel like that's what you're going to bring today. So do you have kind of like an all-encompassing reason why this is important to you?
Yeah. And I'd love to hear your reason of why, you're interested in the brain as well. The more, I have the luxury of working at a company that actually has neuroscientists. So I have access to these folks and can ask all kinds of very serious questions, and also like, why do I want Doritos all the time? And they'll be able to explain to me, and they've been so gracious to explain to me what's going on with, like, in that example, the hungry brain, where a lot of these drives are not necessarily lack of willpower. And what I have found, and what really has made me obsessed with the brain, is the more you understand about it, the more you kind of can understand the world, understand yourself a little bit better. Like, at the end of the day, when you're in tears about a certain decision, or just everyone is angering you and you're frustrated, it's not you, it's probably a mental energy issue, and that your brain does not have all the needs that it has for energy. I like to use the analogy of a bank account for mental energy. And depending on how you slept and depending on how you care for each other, or if you're sick like me, you wake up with a balance and of mental energy for the day. And let's say it's $1,000, just to keep it easy. Your body is constantly trying to conserve energy. Your brain is trying to conserve energy all day long, because it doesn't know if you have $1,000 day ahead of you or a $10,000 day ahead of you. And so knowing that the brain is trying to conserve all day long, but it's consuming a ton of energy. I mean, one thing you need to know about the brain is that pound for pound, the brain uses more energy than any organ in the body. Like it's just a like monster of energy consumption. And thinking, and especially right now in any kind of business role that you have, we're inundated not only with information, but inundated with decision making.
Oh,
Long. And that uses your bank account. Every time you're making withdrawals, and you're going to run out of funds at some point during the day. And unless you come up with protocols or ways to replenish funds, your bank account, you're going to run into the red. And that's when things like anxiety, stress, like all those things start to manifest. You know, your willpower, you know, that's when I'm hitting the bag of Doritos and I'm like, oh, I don't have the willpower to resist them.
No, you need the energy.
Yeah, I need the energy, and I don't have the currency. I don't have the bank account, which is in charge of willpower. I've spent all my mental energy funds. So, you know, whether it's Doritos or ice cream or chocolates, you know, you pick your poison. But a lot of people really beat themselves up because they're like, why can't I not do this thing? And it's when you step back and you go, oh, the brain isn't being fed enough mental energy. I either need to slow down my day or I need to figure out how to replenish my mental energy.
So let me ask you this question. Mouth and brain, the words don't always keep up with the speed of my brain. So I was the kid, my parents will say over and over again to anybody who will listen to them, like Amber, when she was a toddler, would run around in circles. Like she would not take a nap, but if we just let her run around in circles, she would drop and fall asleep right there. Like that's who I am as an adult. Like that's who I am. And so I have tons of energy. Like when I wake up in the morning, like I got to get the energy out right away or it's like not good for the world. So what I found myself doing now that I live near the ocean, again, I grew up in Southern California, moved to Tennessee for 30 years. Now I'm in Florida. And at the end of my day, I just throw my dog in the car and we go to the beach and I literally just sit there. No AirPods, no nothing. I just stare at the ocean, watch the sunset. I throw my dog back in the car and I come back home. And then like I can do all the home things because I feel like recharged, like all the crud from the day, all the energy. Like, is that doing something in my brain?
Yeah, for sure. So that's like a non-sleep restorative activity, almost a meditation, probably. Yeah. Very meditative, like, which has been studied like crazy, that shows that it does replenish, stimulate neuroplasticity, and really help build mental energy. And so good for you. You've stumbled and a lot of people fall in the habit of taking breaks, but they're non-restorative breaks. They're breaks in front of their phone. They're breaks in front of the TV. And your brain is still working. Maybe not, your body is not working, but you're still burning calories. And so to find a restorative, sleep-like, meditative-like, you know, you're with the ocean, you're grounding. There's all kinds of
feet are in the sand.
Things so not to get too technical because I'm not neuroscience. You
can't get too technical.
But, they say so the frequency of the ocean waves, you know how there's like alpha, beta, delta, gamma waves? The ocean waves are very similar to, that put out the same frequency that your brain wants to mirror, and it's very similar to a meditative frequency. So there's something in even that, just being in a state where your body naturally loves patterns. That's another thing I was going to talk about the brain.
Oh, please.
It's seeking out patterns, and way it conserves energy is finding a pattern on something and moving on. But for you, if you're at the ocean, that high restorative frequency that the ocean gives out, the hertz that it gives out, is very similar to a meditative frequency. So your body's trying to match that pattern. So that's probably why it's extremely restorative.
Okay. Well, so the mental bank account analogy is fantastic. So again, taking a big step back, you use the term neuroplasticity. Like, I know what that is. I think it's like one of the coolest things on the planet. I love that is even a thing that we can do to like improve. But I don't know if my audience even knows what that means or what the process is.
Yeah. So the technical definition of it is the ability for the brain to form and reorganize new connections. And usually it's in the response of learning or following an injury. And what's great about stimulating neuroplasticity is it's like expanding your bank account. And so the more you can stretch and the more that everything, it just gives you more resources, more capacity. And there's some really exciting science coming out, even simple things that even like in the last 10 years, there was a belief that neuroplasticity wasn't possible after you reached a certain age. And now that's completely disproven. In fact, on your deathbed, you can still be doing and reorganizing your brain and rewiring your brain. So it's a fantastic time to live in because now we have science that like, if you continue to basically learn new things. And so, and, you know, everything from like juggling to learning an instrument to learning a new language. I mean, there's a long list. In fact, our company's website, Neurohacker, we have quite a few pieces of content on different neuroplastic activities you can incorporate into your daily life.
Okay. So that's rad, first of all. And so I've got a question on that. And this is not a pat myself on the back thing. Like, I am crazy. I am not a normal person. And I know that. And I'm fine with that. I'm not here to try to be cool. I'm here to like get some stuff done while I'm on planet Earth. So people can think whatever they want to think about me. But one thing that people say like frequently is like, you have so much bandwidth. Like you can just like, my days are more gets done in an amber day than, and like significantly more gets done in an amber day. Why is that? Is it because like I like hard things. I like hard things. I want hard things. If it's not hard, I'm like, nah, like I'm good. That's boring.
Right. I mean,
that part
mental
of
toughness,
that
resilience, you know, you probably have you have a big bank account, Amber. Like,
I've got a lot of trauma. But so like when you say resilience, like that's the thing. But is that possible for everybody? Or is that like some people are just wired that way? Or is that because I like to do hard things and I like to challenge my brain? It's like mind candy. Like my partner says, like I've had other people in the past who are like, they don't love that I'm like a diehard businesswoman. But my partner now is like, oh, you have to. Like, what would your brain do? Like, you need those problems to solve. Like, that's your mental gymnastics.
yeah.
So is that like a common need?
Well, I think you've programmed, everyone can, you know, program their thought patterns to be positive around hard things. I think it's very normal, especially I remember reading this quote from Maria Montessori about children. And they said a child becomes really, really frustrated right before it's acquiring a new skill. And like teachers can observe that in the classroom, just the struggle and they're in tears. And it's like right before they get to the
breakthrough,
the next level. And so I think that that's a very common, like the struggle. So whether or not you enjoy that struggle, whether or not you understand that usually when you're in the tears of a project or you're tearing through or, you know, you're learning a new song on the guitar and you just can't stand it, that you're probably like 1 inch away from punching through. And probably you figured that out. And so you like that taste of frustration because you know what's on the other side. And, you know, I love that there's like a quote about a CEO that like to be a good CEO, you have to love the taste of your own blood in your mouth because you're constantly getting punched in the face. Right. And if you can just take it and just love the taste of your own blood, then nothing can hurt you. You just keep going.
Come at me.
And I think that you've probably taught yourself how, like you view the big picture of it. And not necessarily do you enjoy being tortured but you know what it means.
Yeah.
And the win, the dopamine rush of winning or achieving that milestone is worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love me some dopamine. I have ADD. So all right. So now that we kind of understand like what is neuroscience, like what is neuroplasticity, let's talk about neuromarketing. Now that we know that we have these mental bank accounts and that we're constantly looking for ways to like satisfy and get more energy and overcome like our deficits and that sort of thing, how do we now apply this to purchasing decisions?
Yeah. Well, okay. One step before we get there, because there's 3 things that the brain does to conserve energy that apply to this conversation.
Okay.
And one thing the brain does to conserve energy is it creates processes and habits, because then it doesn't have to conserve as much energy. And so when we perform a task over and over again, it becomes automatic, and you don't use the same amount of calories that you did for learning a new skill. It's kind of easier. And so the brain will gravitate to anything it's done before, or habits, naturally, because it's trying to conserve energy. The second piece is shortcuts. The brain is going to look for shortcuts in decision-making. This is a whole category called heuristics. It's going to help you make snap judgments based on limited information rather than engaging in really the difficult work of like looking at every aspect of information in order to make a decision. The brain doesn't want to waste all those calories. Again, it's very concerned about you running out of calories. And three, this is where it's really kind of fascinating. The brain is filtering out information all day long based on what it thinks is important to you. There's a whole beautiful department of the brain called the reticular activating system. This is the whole red car syndrome, where you never noticed red cars. You bought a red car. Now all you see is red cars. And it's so pervasive. You literally, you go on YouTube and like watch a YouTube video. This lady will be like, look at this yellow duck. You're going to see this yellow duck in a week. I promise you. And you will, because your brain is seeking out a pattern and that you tell it. So the fact that like whatever you're obsessed with, whatever you have taught your brain to pay attention to, it's going to raise a flag, show it to you. The things that you haven't deemed super important, it's going to filter out. You won't even see it. I laugh. I'm like, maybe there's elephants everywhere. And I just have never thought to, that's kind of mad. But the point is that you can miss some really obvious information because your brain is filtering it out, and it has not prioritized it because it can only contain the reticular activating system. It is responsible for filtering it out. It can't handle the magnitude of information. And why these things are important to the marketing piece is when you understand how a consumer is undergoing all of these processes when it comes to shopping, when it comes to interacting on the web, then you can really make some changes in your marketing to help support some of these processes that are conserving energy. A lot of, a common example is remarketing, right? Someone never heard of your brand before, saw it on a podcast, and then the brand will have a series of ads retargeting that. And it'll go from a consumer saying, oh, I never heard. And now it's showing, it's everywhere. When it's not really everywhere, it's just the brain all of a sudden put a little mark on it, reticular activating system saw that product and now is going to filter out and make you aware every time you see it. You may have saw it a dozen times before, but you're going to really see it now that your body has, or your brain has kind of flagged it as important.
And is that why, like the old adage was like a brain needs to see a brand 7 times before they even consider if they want to do anything with it? It like takes at least 7 times to just register with them. Is that the same because it's not on your agenda until it is on your agenda? Or would we have better luck if we understood, like, how do you know what your customer or what your prospective customers are looking for, needing, that sort of thing? Like, where does all that fit in?
Yeah. So, it definitely varies brand to brand. But again, like sitting yourself, how many ads do you see in a day? Like the statistic is startling. And every time I look it up, it's even more startling. But it's in the order of magnitude of it is just insane, right? And so to stand out on that, an advertiser has to be very targeted in its approach, because the brain is we're inundated of things. And I think that number for 7 is actually quite higher these days.
Probably, yeah. So
I think being aware of the shortcuts. So talking about processes and habits. So there's 2 ways to think about this. If there's marketers or business people listening to this that can influence their marketing team, one thing to be aware of, that a lot of decisions are made in the marketing department when it comes to budget, creative, copy, resources, etc. And the more that you can support and be aware that like decision fatigue is real and that a lot of mistakes happen over there, and it's not an intentional thing on your marketing department. It's the brain is trying to conserve resources. And so setting up kind of like systems to stay objective, to have outside opinions involved, to keep in mind that there are heuristics involved that are shortcuts that the brain's going to kind of take, and that will support or almost encourage like going after sunk costs and things like that. So having like some steps in there to support your team, knowing what you know about the brain.
Can you give an example of that? Like what type of system would help people make good marketing decisions?
Yeah. So one of I'll just share a personal story. So one of my weaknesses is this escalation of commitment heuristic. And a lot of people do it. And in fact, it's once you've committed to something, it's kind of difficult, even if there are signs to get out of the deal or the media buy, that once you've kind of committed to it, you're in it and you're going to do everything you can and grind on it, even though all the signs are that it's not working out. And this heuristic is called the escalation of commitment. It means we're overly invested, almost irrationally, to what we've committed to. And so I kind of just, I know, right? Okay.
That's me.
Yeah.
I said I'd do it.
And you kind of buy into it. You sold yourself on it. So too. And so then when you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I need different creatives, or maybe I need this, or maybe and so you keep grinding on this thing that like, doesn't make sense. The expression, do not throw good money at bad, right? That is this heuristic. And the brain's doing this just to conserve energy. It's like, hey, you decided this already. Don't spend calories deciding something you already decided upon. So I know this about myself. So I want to really slow to make a commitment. At this point, at certain kinds of commitments, that because I know I already have this bias going on once I've committed to it. So I want to be really selective on the commitments I do make. Two, I've enlisted other leadership to be like my checks and balances on this. And I think that, just even taking step 1 and step 2 and being aware that like, hey, this thing happens. It's not me. It's not a mark on my personality or anything like that. It's a natural thing. The brain's trying to conserve energy. It doesn't want to make the same decision twice. And so it's going to make you overly biased about a decision you've already made. So just owning up to it, knowing that it doesn't want to spend calories 2 times, but you need to in business. You need to re-examine every single thing.
All the time.
All the time.
Always evolving. Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting because I have Christina, who's my executive assistant, and I joke all the time with her, like, your number one job is to protect me from me. That is her number one job. So maybe I have that system in place myself. Not to mention like a team and like different personalities, different ways of looking at things, like really having diverse perspective on the team is helpful as well, because I'm a risk taker and I need people who are not risk prone to help be like, well, wait a second, what if, I think that's healthy. So one thing that really sparked an interest with me, in addition to all of this other neuromarketing, and I know it's a part of that, but I do emotion-based branding. So I'm always looking for the emotional connection with the distinct audience. Like, what is it that audience needs? And I think it's like emotionally connected brands get referrals at like 74% more than a non-emotionally connected brand. So I'm like, how many referrals would you like where you don't have to market quite as much because you have referral marketing going on for free? Doesn't it make sense to, even if you think I'm like, I don't do emotions, like, yeah, you did. You just got pissed off at somebody earlier. That's anger, a secondary emotion, which means you have now felt 2 emotions to get to that state. So come at me with, I don't do emotions. I want to know your view on the role of emotions in like current situations and memories, and like, how does all of that come together to make purchasing decisions based on our brains?
Right. No, I'm so glad you brought that up because I didn't talk about it yet. So the brain over indexes emotional experiences. In fact, if you really want to like, you can study like Tim Quick or Tony Robbins that talk about how to increase your memory. And they're always about like trying to attach it to an emotion. Because your brain is wired to remember emotional events. It also is wired to over index negative emotional events. And that's due to just survival.
Sure.
And, if we, a negative, we stepped in a hole that had a snake, we got to remember, hey, and from our evolutionary background. And so emotional experiences that you can create as a brand are going to be memorable. And again, that memory it's going to pay so many more dividends than just one memory, because the reticular activating system is then going to be wired to find information, to find ways to see your brand again. So it's quite potent to have emotion-led brands like you were speaking about.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that we have a large audience, obviously, of women, and we have very smart men who want to hear the different perspective of women in business and how we do business. And like, certainly I know tons of men who know how to do emotional based marketing and emotional based branding but not all. And so I'm just, whatever side of the coin you are, whatever gender you identify as, like, I hope that you hear that when you attach emotions to memories and then you can trigger those emotions coming out, that is a different level of connection than the old way of doing things, Mad Men style, which is you will look cool, you will look prominent, you will have the American dream if you buy this and everybody sees that you have this. We're past that. COVID was like, we saw behind the curtain, we saw that the Wizard of Oz was not who he thought he was. Like, it's different now. And so we can't do the Mad Men style anymore. We have to do it in a way that is connecting to individual human beings and the desires in their inner world. So that's going to be my soapbox moment for this episode. So now that we know this about our brains and like how our brains are wired and how our brains want to conserve energy and make new neural pathways to be open to new things and learn new things, and we need to attach our memories to emotions to memories and all that kind of stuff, how do we create a campaign out of all this information? Like, can we dial it into like maybe just a few steps? I mean, I know we've got just minutes left in the episode, but what are just a few core steps? And if we go over, it's fine, that someone listening to this can be like, that was so interesting. I'm going to take this new product launch, let's say, and I'm going to try this out on this widget that we're putting out into the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd love to ask you for some advice on emotional-based marketing strategies, because I think that is pretty core to incorporate in our next steps. What's like the one bullet that you would advise for?
Well, I think that, I mean, this is like so cliche or like so basic, but we say like, know your customer. And then like, there's so many people that are like, this is your customer avatar. And I'm like, are we really looking at the people that we want to give their hard-earned money to us as an avatar, like a LinkedIn or a Facebook or a TikTok image? Like, let's quit calling them avatars. How about that? Because they're people. And then like, it's like, okay, well, what is it that they want? What problem are we solving? That's business. I solve your problem. You give me money. That's business. So what's the problem that they're having? And then what's the emotional condition that surrounds that problem? And then we go after that. So if we know your customer, know their problem, know what the emotions are that come from that problem. So like, for example, one I love to use is like oil of Olay does not sell on like the chemicals or the formula, like that's part of it, but they are selling women a solution to their fear. That's it. Women are afraid of looking old. And so they answer that fear with all the solutions they have where you don't have to be afraid about looking old anymore. It's just that simple. And so what emotion are you appealing to when you're selling your product? It could be frustration. It could be that you want a sense of adventure. It could be that you are afraid. It could be that you're seeking joy. It's that you're wanting prominence. It's you want community. Like there's all these emotional triggers that people want in their life, and your product, whether it's a widget or an experience or a vacation or a massage, whatever those things are, can all get plugged into an emotion.
That's Amazing. I'm glad I was here for this.
Your turn.
Right. Wow. I know. So I think, so I'm in violent agreement that that strategy would be first and foremost, right? Truly knowing your customer, having a emotional connection with the problem, and executing, right? And then let's get tactical on a couple of the other items that I spoke about, which is that, and let's just like for a minute think about the escalation of commitment heuristic. I mean, there's a lot of heuristics such as anchoring, which is really important in price, how you display your price and things like that. And again, these are all related to the mental energy that's observed. I mean, anchoring, so you say, it's $5.99 was $15.99, and then your brain starts anchoring the value there, right? So this is the not revolutionary ideas, but just being
colors, all that, font.
Aware of your arsenal of choices and understanding the brain is looking for shortcuts. And so if it can quickly see, wow, there's value there. Oh, so, okay, let's talk about the construction of an ad and then the landing page for just one brief second. So we have the emotional connection and the problem, etc. But breadcrumbing it out in a way that gets the consumer to commit, right? Because the more commitments the consumer can make, according to the heuristic of escalation of commitment, it gets a little more, they have to put more effort into saying no than to yes. Ooh. And so this is a way that you can think about organizing your content in a way, asking questions, maybe asking for small commitments along the way, like a free guide or to enter their email or a free quiz or, things like that in order for them to expel commitments throughout the way with your brand. And as you, in exchange for information, they're giving commitments, it makes it easier for their brain to say yes to more commitments. And that is just one heuristic that's involved in organizing a campaign.
So I think that's where I get really frustrated in, I'm going to say it, y'all know I'm not a man hater, but like this bro marketing, like hashtag boom, and like, we're going to crush it. And we got 5 targets. It's like, are we at war? Like, are we targeting somebody? Like, what are we shooting them? Like, what's happening next? Like, what world are we living in here? And like, when you really look at it, like, I mean, especially what you do, like you are in service to humanity by providing nootropics. I think I said that right.
Yep.
What I do, I feel like is very much in service to humanity. And so like, there's a different vibe there, but like, I don't care if you're selling a Corvette, like they're not a target, you know what I mean? Right. So like when you go into these spaces and you're learning how to do internet marketing online, and it's all like ethical bribe and like all these words, it's like, you're taking the psychology out of it. You're taking the emotion out of it. You're taking the neuromarketing out of it. And like, there are reasons why we pick red for a sale. There's a reason why we use blue for trust. There's a reason why we use a lot of white space and serifed fonts for luxury and black. There's a reason why all this happens. And it's not so we can hashtag boom and like crush it. Like, that's not why. And so I think just changing the language and being more scientific about all of this is incredible. And I'm hoping that your book, if we could touch on that, because that's like a big deal. When is that coming out?
Probably later this year. You know how it's a moving target as we're working with the publisher, but I'm really excited and proud of the work that we're putting in that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you should, because you're going to be a published author. And did anybody tell you when you signed up for this that you needed to schedule your nervous breakdown somewhere in the process? Did anybody give you the heads up?
I was completely, I'm laughing now because I really didn't, going into it, anticipate any of the things that everybody told me was true about how frustrating, how hair pulling, how you really don't have time to take this on. I have 2 small children, a very demanding job, and finding time to write a book is just heroic. And so, all that's true. It's very difficult. It's been very difficult, but I'm very excited to share the information. As I started the podcast as saying I've had the luxury of having so much access to information at Neurohacker, like neuroscientists and the people, the doctors that come in and out and the thought leaders that come in and out of the door over here is just insane. And I've really used it not only to help myself, but also to create content to help other people. And, I started sharing it with people one, piece at a time. And everyone was like, like the world would appreciate just a little, writing it all down and sharing it, because truthfully, it transformed my life. And I felt like in the biohacking space, it's very male dominated.
Yeah.
And I think that, what led me to biohacking is becoming a mom, because every bite of food really mattered when I was pregnant. And you start researching that and start taking it seriously. And then thereafter, it just kind of is like a snowball effect of that what are the necessary things to thrive and what's going on with the brain. The fact that I just feel like women are underutilizing the tools for brain development that can really take us to the next level. And whether it's nootropics, whether it's very neuroplasticity enabling activities in a daily way. We talk about self-care all the time. Women are like, self-care, blah, blah, blah. But what a great way to self-care? Do something hard every day.
Yeah.
And your
write a book, girl.
Grow.
Write a book.
Your brain's going to grow, and it's going to be so empowering when something hard comes your way and you deal with it with grace and with intellect and things like that. But so anyway, with that passion and interest, I kind of put together stories of my own biohacking experiments, things I've learned. We have a podcast as well, so a lot of interviews through our podcast, Collective Insights, were pulled into the book. So I'm very excited for it to be in its next phase of life, which will be published.
Yeah. Well, when you get that close to getting out in the world and you get ready to launch it, you'll have to come back in and we'll talk more about the contents of the book. And because I do agree with you, I think, women especially, we do tend to carry more of the emotional load in our worlds, whether it's our immediate family, our kids, or our parents or siblings or whatever. Women do traditionally carry that. And then we have a lot of things evolutionary that come into play as well, and societal expectations and standards and evolving shifts in culture. And I mean, we are trying to exist in a world that was not created for us, as we're slowly evolving the world to have more of a feminine energy to it. And just heads up, we're going to have control of the majority of the wealth in the world in not so many years. So we got to get on board. We got to figure it out. We got to figure out how to forgive me, but man up, because this is, and again, listen, I'm a daddy's girl. I say this all the time. I'm a daddy's girl. I'm a boy's mom. I'm I love all of my guy best friends. I'm in a mastermind, just me and dudes. That's it. I have nothing against men, nothing. But the reality is that this is a man's world. It was designed for men, and we are now in it. And then we have to continue to adapt ourselves and our own power and take control of every aspect of our own agency in this world. And part of that is biohacking.
Right.
It just is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And, it's still shocking to me how I'm the only girl in the executive room all the time still. And yet I think that there's a difference between being a female that's overly masculine. I think we have to embrace our feminine energy and our feminine power while simultaneously manning up, like you said.
That's right.
And so it's a tough job, but you know what? I can do hard things. You can do hard things.
That's right.
And, it's our birthright to advance. And I'm really delighted at the challenge. It is a significant one, but I'm glad people like yourself that are alongside with me.
Girl, I'm cheering you on. You better stay in touch with me as you're writing this book, because I'm excited for you. So before we find out where we can find you, how people can meet with you, all that kind of stuff, I always like to ask the final question, and that is, if you can offer one parting piece of advice, something that if they forget everything else that you say today, if they just hang on to this, and I'm sure there's some neuroscience behind this process, but if they just hang on to this one tidbit of advice, what would that be for you?
There's so many things to say, but I'm going to keep it topical. And if you remember only one thing, remember that mental work requires physical energy. And if you're having trouble, you're feeling like your bank account is empty, it's not a you. I feel like a lot of women internalize this as a deficit in their personality or a limitation, craving that something's wrong with them, but it's likely just a mental energy deficit. And if you can just sit with that and be like, that's a problem I can attack piece by piece. And I'm not a bad person. I'm not, overly emotional. I'm not imbalanced. You probably just need more mental energy. And that's a problem we can solve bit by bit.
Oh, but that requires us taking agency over our own lives. You cannot outsource protecting and restoring your own energy. So I love this, and I love everything about you. So we want to make sure. So first of all, we know that if you want to try any of the products, right, it's neurohacker.com/bombshell-business. And if you use the code, all one word, bombshell-business, you can get 15% off of any. I think I said it right at the beginning. I went to Amazon to make sure that I could hear somebody else saying it. Is it Qualia?
Yes, ma'am.
Yay. Okay. So I did check out, you'll see great reviews on Amazon. And of course, I looked through all of them to be like, are these paid reviews? Are these tested? Are these real reviews? They were real reviews. I could tell, or at least it appeared to me. I shouldn't say I can tell, it's for sure. But so it's neurohacker.com/bombshell-business. And the code to get 15% off of any of those nootropics are bombshell-business. And then they can find you as well on Instagram at Neurohacker, and then Facebook, Neurohacker Collective. And then we'll put this in the show notes as well. Like if you wanted to meet with Lauren, calendly.com/neurohacker-Lauren. And then last but not least, you guys have a podcast. So tell us that again.
Collective Insights. It's basically a love letter for our founders. They wanted to interview thought leaders and just be putting out episodes of just pure information on every aspect of wellness, as well as, more consciousness kind of topics. And it goes from deep to heavy to wide to long. It's been a true labor of love putting that on for now 7 years. So yeah, check it out. It's really fun.
I'll be a new listener, so that's definitely going on. It's my kind of stuff. Like, just feed my brain, just feed it. I want it, all of it. Like, I could just see things sprouting outside of my head. Like, that's the way to live. So thank you so much for sharing yourself with us, Lauren. And I can't wait till this episode goes live, because I think it's going to just be hugely valuable to so many women and men who are listening. So thank you for sharing your light with us. And any final words?
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, Bombshell, you know what to do with this information. We don't do Facebook groups or stuff like that because we need to conserve our mental energy. So we don't need to be on Facebook looking at cat videos. However, our commitment as the Bombshell community is to show up for other bold, brave, unwaveringly confident women. And part of that is sharing this episode with somebody that might be feeling low energy, down on themselves, like, I can't take all of it. I'm falling apart. I don't have all the energy for my life. And maybe you could be like, hey, why don't you just go listen to the ocean for a minute? Maybe you might just need a snack. How about you sit down and you don't look at your phone and you just breathe for a minute? Show them what's possible with a little bit of science and Lauren's gift that she's given to us today. And with that, I will see you on the next episode.